Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 2341, 2341, and Mike Matthews. It's going to be a quick podcast today because
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I have to pick up a burrito, and that's neato. Hey, I love to talk about things that people say a lot, like I love burritos. That's how this podcast started, and you could tell all your friends it started like that, and they'll be very impressed.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
And that we learned a lot from the delicious burrito. It's all
Mike's
kinds of life
Daily
wrapped up in a
Podcast.
The tortilla.
Yeah!
What would you call it? Is it like a roof that covers us all? Is it like a seal? A cover? I don't know, but tortillas are just so delicious. All right, and we're not talking about turkeys today because my mom gets sick when she eats turkey for some reason. Actually, apparently, dark meat is okay. It's the breast meat that she says might be full of hormones, and that's what makes her feel sick. But apparently, for Thanksgiving, there was also another holiday happening simultaneously called Hanksgiving, which is giving thanks for one of the world's most beloved actors, Tom Hanks, who did a fantastic job being Walt Disney in that movie. What was it? I forget. Billboard magazine has named The Weeknd's Blinding Lights as the greatest song of all time. Guess who it beat out? Chubby Checker and The Twist. I once met Chubby Checker at a Greek restaurant. It was something that my company was putting on. Actually, it was a Christmas party. That's right. That was being held at a Greek restaurant in Ventura.
And here's today's podcast picture.
In the Ventura Harbor. And he was there because he was a friend of one of the disc jockeys who had been a big part of preserving the oldies music, the music from the 50s and 60s. And so Chubby Checker was good friends with him. And at one point, there was, during the festivities, they had a belly dancer come out and do like a dance that was popular in Greek culture, I guess. And he got up and danced with her. There were no smartphones. Basil the Boxer wasn't there either. But had there been smartphones, everyone would have been taking pictures. I guess there were smartphones, but back then they weren't really taking the best pictures yet as of that point. So, okay. Anyway, that is what we learned from that Chubby Checker is no longer at the top. It is The Weeknd. And the last podcast was called Weekends. And there it goes full circle. That's what today's podcast is all about, which, as I said earlier, I can't really go too much into detail because I got to run out and get a burrito right now. But when I come back, we can finish some of these thoughts and topics and find out what the podcast picture is, because I have no idea at this point. Did you go see that? What was it? Oh, Ghostbusters. There it is. Ghostbusters came out was it this weekend? Anyway, I think a lot of people went to see that and that Gucci movie. And this is an important fact that I did not know until recently, that you should stop texting okay to people or yes. Apparently, these words without an exclamation point or an accompanying emoji can come off as passive-aggressive or dismissive or angry. This is according to New York Times advice columnist Katie Weaver. In person, an okay comes up with a facial expression, a positive delivery, maybe even a thumbs up. By text, okay or just yes are cold, and you could be seen as rude. That was poorly written, but there you go. Who wrote that? I got that from somebody that I think they were actually using it on a radio show, but they pulled this material from somewhere and did not. I don't think they checked the. I should have checked. What I should have done was check the proper to make sure that the grammar was all proper, and I did not. So you'll just have to go back, hit rewind, and try and make head or tails out of what I just said. But first, I gotta go get a burrito.
Later that day,
I just had a burrito. And you know, I was thinking about it, and that life is a burrito, and love is the tortilla. That's what I have discovered. We already had Basil the Boxer, didn't we? The late great Basil the Boxer. All right, so we're moving quite quickly here on the podcast, and the podcast picture is going to be something from recently, and that I don't know what it is because I am busy looking at all this other information I've amassed. Did you know that we recently had World Toilet Day? And here's a random stat for you. In a recent poll, 12% of men admit to watching movies while on the toilet. That's more than double the number of women who watch movies on the toilet. And back to Thanksgiving again, and how much we dislike turkey now. We yearn for it leading up to Thanksgiving, and then afterwards, The American Farm Bureau released its annual stats on how much Thanksgiving for 10 people costs. And it was up 14% from last year, but still only $5.33 per person. In Oahu, Hawaii, there is a stream that's been contaminated with drinking alcohols. We go outside a cafe anyway where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast. Somewhere in Podcastro Valley, the last place on earth. Cafe anyway. Yes, contaminated with drinking alcohol, likely from a nearby distribution company. The authorities are investigating, but apparently it's so bad that the stream now has an alcohol level of 1.2%. Dang. And yes, I still have not figured out that texting thing. Bill Quirk. That is a real name, Bill Quirk. He represents the assembly. He's our local assembly member, the 20th district. And he sends out this really big, it's not a 3x5 card mailer. It is a huge thing. You could use this probably to break into somewhere. This piece of paper. It's very large, very thick. And he has given 2021 by the numbers a year in review. He has apparently done 29 bills. He's presented 29 bills in Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee. Thank you for that, helping our environment. Okay, where was I going to go with all this? And that was about, so we just watched the very off-the-wall Wet Hot American Summer series. We did not actually, we should have started with the original movie that inspired all of this. But get this, it's not, you can't find it anywhere. I want to have to go to my local library to rent it. It's not on Netflix, even though all the other stuff is on Netflix. And these guys were all from the state. I once had the opportunity to talk to Larry Kenney. His daughter was in the state. And Larry Kenney is the voice of Lion-O, I think, from the Thundercats. Very nice guy. So I interviewed him and asked him a question about his daughter, and he went on and on. It was a great question. He loved to talk about how proud he was of her because she's become this well-known comedian with the state. She was in Role Models. She played the mom of the kid, the nerdy kid. And she's been in a bunch of other stuff. But here are some important things to remember when asking questions. Avoid asking rhetorical questions. And if you don't even know what that is, a rhetorical question is a figure of speech in the form of a question, typically asked in order to make a point rather than to elicit an answer. They're not really questions, but they're designed to force someone into a specific response. And you know what that does? It gets you nowhere. That is according to entrepreneur.com. Ask friendly, clarifying questions when you ask questions. A good question lets you better understand the situation. And this requires not putting people on the defensive. Demeaning a person rarely produces honest feedback. Don't set traps. Don't put the listener on the spot. There's an old joke where a constituent asked his senator if he had quit beating his wife. The question was designed to force a denial of one type or another, not to provide meaningful information. Articulate your questions without erecting a box around them. What is that saying? Don't try and stop people from beating their wives? I don't know what exactly that was supposed to say, but thank you, entrepreneur.com, for giving us an example. Ask open-ended questions. Few questions can be correctly answered with yes, no. Binary replies are often invalid. It is better to ask an open-ended question, one without artificial bounds, and to give the respondent time to answer with the appropriate level of detail and nuance. Open-ended questions also allow the listener greater comfort with the communication, since they are not forced to make incomplete choices. Be grateful. Goes back to what this whole weekend was about. Thanksgiving, gratitude, being grateful and thankful. Thank the person for their response. After all, you will likely want their insights again. Avoid stress. Answers provided during tense situations are often poor ones. If the situation is tense, but not an emergency, then waiting a short time improves the odds of a quality answer, since the respondent will have time and focus to contemplate. Or perhaps they'll lie. That's the other thing, if they're given too much time. Isn't it the immediate answer is more believable because you gave it more immediately? Avoid being too direct. Even if you're trying to get a specific answer, being too direct and too specific can lead to rigid answers. Instead of should we create product A or B, ask what product is the market asking for and how do our options meet that demand. And this is something that I know several people in this world in which I am in, this media world, this world of broadcasting and podcasting. A lot of people that do a podcast, they interview. It's all about doing interviews with guests. And the one thing, and I see this on television too, very well-known people that have talk shows and interview people, they do this one thing completely wrong, and that is they don't remember that silence is golden. Being a willing listener, even when the other person is not talking, communication is still active. Take a breather between questions to give you and the other person time to decompress. This makes your communication less like an interrogation, even if it's a fact-finding mission. Ask questions as you would like to be asked them. Take that brief second to think about how you would answer the question you're about to ask. And if you feel uncomfortable, then you need to rephrase it. Something that Tom Snyder was well known for was he listened very, very carefully to what his guests were saying, and that led him into questions that he wasn't even going to consider asking. But it made the interview very more informational, conversational. A lot more was discovered in those interviews. Now, I know some interviewers that do this horrible thing where they ask a question, the guest answers the question, and then they do this ridiculous thing where they start paraphrasing what the guest has just said, and they just say what we just heard over again. instead of coming up with maybe a follow-up question to dig even deeper into what they were talking about. We need to learn more about asking questions. Ray Zinn wrote this. Raymond Ray Zinn, he's an inventor, entrepreneur, and the longest-serving CEO of a publicly traded company in Silicon Valley. And he is best known for creating and selling the first wafer stepper and for co-founding semiconductor company Micrel, acquired by Microchip in 2015. He holds over 20 patents for semiconductor design. Fascinating. Outside a cafe anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley here on FF episode 2340, 2340. Look who is here. Hello, my commander. It's Madame Rootabega, and I love to ask questions. Oh, good. I'm going to ask you a question. Is that okay? Yes. Did you like that question? Yes. Can I ask another one? No. Look who else is here. Hello there, Mike. This is Valentino, the parking attendant. And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that? Mike, we heard that you was watching some television show with your lovely lady friend, there. Yeah, lovely lady friend. Do you know that? Yes, it was wonderful. Watched A Wet Hot American Summer is off the wall as all can be. It's sort of a Americanized Monty Python, modern day, looking back at the 80s, 90s. That's the kind of thing it is if you're in the mood for it. And it's been out now. I think they did the last one in 2017, so it's been a while. And that's the end of the show. Next show, it's going to be the wonderful Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the Engineer. You can chime in about anything we covered. 336MM Daily, 3 plus 3 equals 6. MM as in Mike Matthews Daily. As what this has been daily, as this has been. This has been as you've heard it. It has been daily. And your friend Mike Matthews is trying ever so hard to dissect and understand the phrases that he uses and the expressions, and tries to figure out if they are relevant anymore. That's my goal in life. If you would like to help me with that goal about expressions that are outdated that should be stopped, if you hear me say one that I should stop saying, or if you think you've got a better expression that we should start using instead of the old one that we are currently using, why, let me know about that too. 336MM Daily.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!